And good morning, everyone. I'm glad you're here this morning on Volunteer Sunday. My name is Ray, and I'm one of the pastors here at Washington Cathedral. That wasn't me, I promise. I'm one of the pastors here, and some of you know I just returned back a couple of days ago. I just got back from Africa. I spent about 11, 12 days over in Kenya, and I was on a trip down there. So I'm still navigating through jet lag. So if this message doesn't make any sense, I promise it'll make sense later this evening when I'm supposed to be awake. But yeah, my jokes are going to be rough this morning, I can tell. Seriously, I'm pushing through here because I feel that I got something I want to share with all of you, and I'm excited to be back. I was down there because I was looking for a potential project. We looked at a bunch of schools, a lot of ministries, a lot of orphanages that maybe our church could partner with in the future to be part of what God is doing around the world. And what really stood out on this trip, I've been to Central America and some of South America, and I've studied other levels of poverty, but what really stood out to me here was just the scope, was the magnitude, right? I was in Nairobi, it's a city of about 4 million people, and 2/3 of that city live in slums. And I went into this one slum where, as far as you can see in any direction, were these slum conditions: no water, no electricity, just sewage right down the middle of these dirt roads. And the slum I went to was called Madeira, and it's one of the largest slums in the entire world. There's 1.2 million people living in there. Most of them are kids, have lost parents, have lost to HIV virus, and just being there, I felt like it was a good wake-up call, a reminder. It was an alarm clock to me. It was like God dumping a bucket of cold water on my system to challenge me, to remind me of what's happening around the world and our responsibility, my responsibility as a Christian and our responsibility as a church to respond to what's happening. And during this trip, I realized something I hadn't realized before. I realized that I had lost something. There was something I had, and I lost it. I didn't mean to lose it. I didn't lose it purposely, and I wasn't even aware that it was lost. But I realized that I had lost it, and I know that God is helping me find it. And that's what we're going to be talking about this morning, that some of us, we've lost something we never meant to lose. And the God we serve, our Heavenly Father, our Creator, He is in the business of restoring to us, of helping us find what we lost. Because we've all lost something. And this happens to us all the time. Let me just give you a quick illustration to kind of get you to know what I'm talking about. On the last couple of days of the trip, I went on a safari, and I'm not a huge animal person, right? I'm just not big into, I like to eat, but I'm just not big in terms of like, zoo, animal, I'm not a big animal person. So, but even I was impressed with the safari because I was like in their ecosystem. I was like in a zoo, I go and I visit animals in cages. These animals were visiting me, and I was in the cage in this little campground, and it was really bizarre to kind of flip the script on me. And the campsite I stayed in was run by the Maasai tribe. And the Maasai are a very famous tribe in Africa. To become a man, when you're a young boy, to become a man, you have to go out with a spear and kill a lion. This was back in the day. I would never have become a man. That's just the bottom line if I was a Maasai. My professor at Fuller was actually a missionary to these people. So this campground I was staying at was owned by the Maasai. And I got to stay with them. And the room that I was in, right outside the window, there was a giraffe just walking around doing his business. I looked out, and it looked at me, and I was like, wow, there is a giraffe right there. Like, there's glass, I don't know how big, this big, me and then a giraffe. And I was kind of like, wow, I was like a little kid. I had this sense of wonder. Wow, a giraffe. Well, by the end of the week, a couple of days later, I walked out, I saw a giraffe, and I said, a giraffe again? Really? I want to see a lion. I want to see a bamboo, a rhino, a hippo. I don't know. And I was like, wow, how quickly I lost my sense of wonder in just a matter of days. I was so amazed by this giraffe, but by the end of the week, I was like, big deal, giraffe. That's just crazy. And that happens to me all the time, and I think it happens to us. when I was down there, I was just reminded that, I've probably gone an entire lifetime without thanking God for things that I just take for granted that people down there don't have and they're thanking God for. And like running water. I didn't thank God this morning when I turned the shower on and it was running water because I just take it for granted, forgetting that the bulk of the world, they don't have running water. This morning I flicked the switch and the light came on and I was able to work and I didn't thank God. I just kept on going through my day. I took it for granted, forgetting that in this slum, 1.2 million people, the majority of them have no running water, have no electricity, access to healthcare, things that I just take for granted. And that's why I realized I have lost something. I didn't mean to lose it, but I lost it. And what we're going to see in this story is that God helps us find what we didn't mean to lose. Because we've all lost something. We can all relate to losing something, right? You've lost your phone. You've lost your keys. You've lost your wallet. You've lost your purse. If you're a woman, you've lost your purse. I don't know why I had to clarify, but I did. Sorry. You've lost your purse. We've all lost things, right? We've lost our kids, some of us. And then, hopefully not intentionally, but you've lost your kids, and we know what it's like to lose something. And I think that if we are just reflective for a moment and we're honest, we can look back at aspects of our life and we can see that on another level, we've all experienced losing something deeper. Maybe we've all experienced losing something of a spiritual nature. We can look back at our life and say, you know what? I've lost my passion for God. I used to be so in love with God. I was so enthused about what he had done for me, what he was doing for me, what he was in my life. And now it's just become routine. I've lost my first love. Some of us, we can look back and say, I've lost my excitement for community. I used to love gathering around other Christians, hearing their stories, having them hear my stories. I used to love just, rubbing shoulders with other people like that. And I don't like that anymore. I've lost that. I've lost my generosity. I used to be so generous and so grateful. Everything I had, I was just realizing God's given it to me a blessing. And I've lost that. I hold on too tightly to things now. I used to know what God's will for my life was, and I've lost it. See, we've all lost something. We've all can relate to losing something. Because we're all navigating through life and we have turbulence in our life. And because we have turbulence, we have to focus on the circumstances right around us. And as we start focusing on what's happening around my life, I ignore what's happening around the world. I ignore what God is doing around the world. My perspective is narrowed. And I start losing my passion for living, my passion for God. And then terms like purpose and destiny, they don't elicit the emotions they used to elicit. The goals I have set for myself, they don't seem goals that are worth striving for anymore. I'm so surrounded, I'm so distracted by my surroundings. And God, he seems a million miles away. See, as a pastor, I talk to people all the time who tell me they've lost something of a spiritual nature. They tell me, Ray, I've lost my joy. I have no sense of joy. I've lost my purpose. I don't know what I'm living for. I don't know what the purpose is. I've lost my hope. I used to believe, I used to pray, and I used to expect that God would do miracles. Now, why? Why bother? I don't have any hope anymore. I've lost my hope. I've had people tell me I've lost my faith. I used to know God was there for me, but it's not that way anymore. I've lost my faith. So maybe if we were just to sit down and be honest for a second, we can look back and we can see there's some aspect of our life that we've lost. And what we're going to see this morning is we're going to see the answer to the question, what do you do when you're walking through life and you realize you've lost something you didn't mean to lose? How does God respond? How are we supposed to respond? And what we're going to see is that God, he's in the business of helping us find what we never meant to lose. Because that's what God does. He helps us find. He seeks that which was lost, and he helps us find that which is lost. So if you have your Bible, I'm going to encourage you to read a story with me that's going to show this aspect of God. It's found in the book of 2 Kings, chapter 6, and it's verses 1 through 7. And it's kind of a weird story. It's a unique story. And to be honest with you, this story probably fits better at a magic show or a magic convention than it does the Bible. It's not going to make that much sense. When I went to Kenya, I knew that most of the people spoke English, but the majority of the poor people, the kids that I would be interacting with, spoke Swahili. That's the language they speak in Eastern Africa. And they wouldn't be able to understand. So I wanted to do something where I could understand them and communicate with them. So a few weeks ago, Elijah and I, we picked up magic, and we thought, wow, if I can learn some magic tricks, I could impress these kids. So I actually brought a magic trick to show you guys. No, I'm just kidding. I did it. I didn't bring a magic trick because really the only people I can impress are ages 3 to 5, and that's about it. And everyone else can see like the things down my shirt. But anyways, it was really fun engaging with these people, and I'm telling you that because the story we're going to read, that's what it seems like. It seems like a cool magic trick. It doesn't seem miraculous. It doesn't seem to have any other purpose except that. And we're going to see that you're going to have to bear with me as we read this story, and I'll try to walk us through this. So 2 Kings chapter 6. One day, the group of prophets came to Elisha, and they told him, as you can see, this place where we meet with you is too small. Let's go down to the Jordan River where there are plenty of logs. There we can build a new place for us to meet. All right, he told them, go ahead. Elisha has the school of prophets. We don't know how many people are in the school. There could be 50, there could be 100. We're not sure. Scholars aren't sure. But what's for sure is that he had this company of prophets that he was responsible for. And they would meet, and he was like the teacher, the principal, the headmaster of this school. And this school was thriving. More and more people were coming. So much so that the building that they were in was too small to fit all the people, all the prophets. So they come to Elisha and say, Elisha, we're growing too fast. We need a bigger building. Let's go down to the Jordan River. We can chop down some trees. We can use the logs to build a bigger schoolroom. Elisha says, fine, go ahead. But we're going to continue reading there. Someone suggested, please come with us. And Elisha says, I will, he said. So he went with them. And when they arrived at the Jordan, that's the Jordan River, they began cutting down trees. But as one of them was cutting a tree, his axe head fell into the river. Oh, sir, he cried. It was a borrowed axe. I'm not sure if this has ever happened to you. I've personally never even used an axe in my life. So I'm just imagining that this guy is chopping a tree, and he's chopping, and on one of his chops or one of his swings, whatever you call it, the axe head just flies off. And I guess this was pretty common because in Deuteronomy, there's actually a law that says that if you're chopping a tree and your axe head flies off and kills someone, you're allowed to flee to a city and they'll forgive you. Weird law, but it's in the Bible. So I guess this was a common occurrence. In this case, no one dies, thank God. But there is an axe head that's missing. And then the guy tells Elisha, that axe, that's not my axe. I borrowed it from someone. And if you read in the Hebrew, there's this like sense of urgency, and like he's begging Elisha, help me. This guy's dirt poor. I don't own anything. I don't even have my own axe. I'm not going to be able to pay this guy if I lose this axe. He's kind of pleading with Elisha to help him. So what happens? Verse 6, Elisha asked him, where did it fall? The man of God asked. When he showed him the place, Elisha cut a stick and threw it into the water at that spot. And then the axe head floated to the surface. Ta-da! That's the trick there. That's it. This iron axe head, it's denser than water, right? So the axe head should sink. That's the laws of nature, gravity, physics, water, something. There's some law there that says this is going to sink, and it doesn't. It rises above, and at that point, Elisha says, grab it. Lift it up, your version might say. Pick it up. And the man reached out and grabbed him. It's a weird story. There's no getting around it. It's a ridiculous story, which is perfect because as we've seen these last few weeks, Elisha, he's in the business of the ridiculous. He has so many stories that are absurd, they're outlandish, they don't make any sense, they're irrational. But this miracle kind of stands out. It's cool, it's a cool magic trick, but really what's its significance? What could this story be about? Of all the things Elisha did, why is this one in the Bible? You're telling me there wasn't a better miracle, someone getting sick and healed that could have taken the place of this axe head floating? But it's there, it's in the Bible. So maybe it's a story about a big God who cares about the little details of our lives. This guy can't afford his own axe. He has to borrow one. And he loses it. He doesn't know how to pay him back. And God cares. And maybe that's what the story's about. That God cares enough to help us. Iron was valuable. It was hard to come by. And he didn't want to lose it. Here's what I'm going to try to do. I'm going to try to explain this story using a metaphor. And here's a metaphor I'm going to use. This guy is chopping away with an axe that has an iron edge. Lots of authors in the Old Testament use iron as kind of allusion to our spiritual being, our spiritual sharpness, our relationship with God. One of my favorite verses is Proverbs 27:17 that says, "As iron sharpens iron, so does one friend sharpen another." So there's this sense that that iron edge represents his spiritual edge. So for us, that's what I'm going to try to explain. That him losing his axe head is like us losing our spiritual edge, our spiritual vitality, our sense of passion for God, our zeal that Paul would talk about in the New Testament, our first love that John would talk about. That's what this story is about. It's about a guy who's chopping away, and somehow he loses his spiritual edge. And God shows up miraculously and helps him find what he didn't mean to lose. Because for a lot of us, we look back and we are honest and we can say, I've lost my spiritual edge. So I didn't mean to lose it. I didn't want to lose it. I'm not even aware maybe that I lost it. But I've lost my spiritual edge. And if you haven't lost it, that's great. Keep it. Don't lose it. Keep on going. But for lots of us, we have lost it. We look at times and we know that we've lost something. I've lost it. I lived in Honduras for about 4 years with my family. And it was one of the best experiences of my life, working with some of the poorest of the poor there and seeing just God do miracle after miracle. And I thought that I would just be so grateful for everything he'd given me. And I moved back, and without realizing it, I lost it. I lost my spiritual edge. I started compartmentalizing what God was doing because I have my way of life, my comforts, my things here, and I know what's happening around the world, but I just kind of put it to the margins, I put it to the side, and I just ignore what's happening. And I lost it. I never wanted to become numb to what the issues of injustice around the world. I never wanted to get comfortable, but it happens. And you start ignoring God. And you ignore him one day, and then it's easier the next day, and we develop a hard heart, a callous heart that God's just speaking and we're just ignoring. See, I never wanted to be a full-time pastor, a full-time missionary, a full-time whatever, and a part-time follower of Jesus. But I lost it. And that's what happens. How about you? Have you become a full-time worker and a part-time follower of Jesus? Have you become a full-time mom and a part-time follower of Jesus, a full-time student and a part-time follower of Jesus? Have you become a full-time anything and a part-time follower of Jesus? Because it happens. You didn't mean to lose your edge, but you did. You didn't mean to ignore God, but you did. You didn't mean to go back to that unhealthy pattern, but it happened. You didn't mean to start worrying and being anxious and stressed, but it happened and you did. You didn't mean to start pursuing happiness and pursuing material things, but somehow, some way you did. You didn't mean to fall in this rat race where you're comparing yourself to your right and to your left, but it happened. Somehow you didn't mean to become a part-time follower of Jesus, but it happens. So what do you do? What do you do when you're swinging away, you're chopping away, you're walking through life, and you realize, I've lost my spiritual edge. I didn't mean to. I don't know how I did, but it happened. What do? That's what this story is about. It's about showing us how to find our spiritual edge. And what we see in verse 6, it's very simple. The guy goes to Elisha and says, Elisha, I've lost my axe. I've lost my axe head. I've lost my spiritual edge. And Elisha's first question is, where did you lose it? Where was it? And for us, it's a matter of being honest about where we lost it. Where did you lose your spiritual edge? We're smart people. We can figure this out. Where did we lose it? Where did we leave it? Where is our spiritual edge? When did we start to lose it? Was it with hanging out with the wrong people? Was it when you stopped serving? Was it when you stopped giving to God? Was it when you stopped connecting with people? When was it that you lost your spiritual edge? See, this guy has to be honest and say, Elisha, it's right there. That's where I lost it. This river, the Jordan River, is huge. It could have been anywhere. But he's honest enough to say, Elisha, that's where I lost it. Can we be honest with God and say, God, I look back. I don't love you the way I loved you in the past. I don't love people the way I've loved people in the past. I've lost my joy. I've lost my sense of trust. I've lost my sense of security. I've lost my sense of purpose. And that's where I lost it. When I stopped, when I started, when I ignored, when I just stepped over. Because if we're honest with God, He's going to help us find what we didn't mean to lose. So Elisha says, fine, that's it. And God shows up. He does the miracle. And that axe head floats up to the water. But it doesn't go back automatically. Elisha tells the prophet, grab it, pick it up, lift it out of the water. See, once we're honest with God, God's going to show you where you lost it. And He's going to show you your spiritual edge. And He's going to whisper to you, pick it up. Lift it up. Don't leave it there. Put it back on. Get your spiritual edge back. Because I know it's never too late for us. That's what God does. Whenever His followers lose their spiritual edge, God always helps them find it. Peter lost it and Jesus helped him find it. Matthew lost it and Jesus helped him find it. Thomas lost it and Jesus helped him find it. John, you name a follower, they've all lost it at some point. And God helped them find it. So I know it's not too late for any of us to get our spiritual edge back. It's never too late. We just have to be honest, to tell God where we lost it. And when God shows us what it is, we pick it up. We get our spiritual edge back. We make the tough decisions. We're determined. We're determined to a ridiculous degree. We're not going to lose our edge again. I think that's what this story is all about. It's not too late for you to become who God meant for you to become. It's not too late for you to get your spiritual edge back and do what God meant for you to do. And this is such a common problem. It happens to all of us, the best of us. That John had a vision. And in that vision, God had a message for a group of Christians in Ephesus, in the city of Ephesus. And to this message, he talks about losing their spiritual edge. And he tells them how to get it back. It's in Revelation chapter 2. You can follow along. Here's what he says. This is Jesus talking to a bunch of Christians. They could be talking to us. He says, I know all the things you do. I have seen your hard work and your patient endurance. I know you don't tolerate evil people. You have examined the claims of those who say they are apostles but are not. Sorry, I lost my place here. But are not. You have discovered they are liars. Verse 3, you have patiently suffered for me without quitting. But I have this complaint against you. You don't love me. You don't love each other as you did at first. If you have the New King James Version, the famous phrase is, you've lost your first love. See, this was a group of people who are heroes. They're martyrs. I mean, they're amazing Christians. They're amazing saints. When we look at them, these were the first people who went through all sorts of persecution to testify to what God had done in their lives. And Jesus thanks them for their hard work, for their perseverance. But he says, there's one thing. There's one complaint I have against you. You've lost your first love. You lost your spiritual edge. You didn't mean to do it. You didn't even realize you lost it, but you lost it. And I want to show you how to get it back. And he shows them. Verse 5, he says, look how far you've fallen. Turn back to me and do the works you did at first. Do the works you did at first. When you had your spiritual edge, what were you doing? Were you just sharing your faith with everyone? Were you just constantly reading scripture, memorizing verses? Were you constantly serving? What was it you were doing when you had your spiritual edge? Then go back and do that. Turn around. Don't keep on chopping away without a spiritual edge. Don't go through life without God at the center of your life. Turn around and get your spiritual edge back. See, I never thought it would go away. I didn't realize my spiritual edge was gone, but it was. See, and I think back to when I had that edge. I remember I was 19 years old. I went on my first trip out of the country to Mexico. It wasn't my first trip. It was like my third trip. But it was my first trip like on a mission trip. I feel like I have to be honest. I lied to the last service and said my first trip. But this wasn't technically my first trip. I had gone to Europe and other places, but I was with my family. This was like my first trip to serve in Mexico amongst the poorest of the poor. And it changed me. Something happened to me that day. Something happened to me that week. God did something in my heart. It was like God had an open heart surgery on me that week. And I was never the same. And I remember that. I remember changing. So that's the things I used to do at first. So I went on another trip. I went to this country, Africa, Kenya, continent Africa, country Kenya. And I went there because I want God to shake my settled soul, to make me uncomfortable. I wanted to see people who are so content with so little, to remind myself of why I tend to be so discontented with so much that I have. I went to church last Sunday and half the people in the church didn't have shoes on. They were barefoot. And the worship leader was singing a song where the church would echo back and they were saying, the life I have, God has given me. The clothes I have, and the congregation would say, God has given me. And one of the things the worship leader says, the shoes I have, God has given me. And I thought, that's ridiculous. Half the people here are thanking God for something they don't even have. But what's more ridiculous is that I don't thank God for the 10 pair of shoes that I do have. I met a guy there who he had 16 siblings, 16 brothers and sisters, and 12 of them died. And he buried 4 of them. And they didn't die from the HIV virus or anything like that. They died of something much simpler, something much more treatable. They died of malaria. A few dollars, and the medicine could have healed them. But he didn't have access to health care. So instead, they just watched his siblings die. 12 out of 16. That's 75% death rate, not even survival rate. That makes me uncomfortable. I held a baby that was about the size of Isabella, my daughter. And I know that baby's not going to survive much longer because of her condition. And I let that shake me. I let that make me uncomfortable. I want that to make me feel like there's something wrong, this sense of injustice. Because that baby shouldn't die. That baby should live. And it will live if the global church fulfilled their mission. I want that to make me uncomfortable. Because that's how God is giving my edge back. That's how God is going to give me my spiritual edge back so I can go on chopping and doing what he's called me and us to do. So what are you going to do? I have 2 questions I'm going to close with. Where did you lose your spiritual edge? Where did you lose your spiritual edge? And then number 2, how are you going to get your spiritual edge back? What are you going to do? How are you going to turn around? Where are you going to look for it? How are you going to get your spiritual edge back? Because I know God doesn't want you to keep on going through life without that spiritual edge. I know God wants to help you find what you never meant to lose. And he's going to do that. He's giving me back my edge. He's giving you back your edge because that's what our God wants to do. Today's Volunteer Sunday, and we're thanking the volunteers who are serving, who with their spiritual edge serve and sacrifice and give of their time, their talents, their resources, their energy to make what we do possible. Thank you for that. But it's also a time to call more people to volunteer. Because maybe that's the first step to getting your edge back. Maybe the first time you taught Sunday school, that's when you had your spiritual edge. Maybe the first time you were part of a small group, that's when you had your spiritual edge. Maybe volunteering is that first step. Maybe that's how you're going to get your edge back. And if that's the case, pull out this card that looks like this at the end of your bulletin. Talk to Jackie White at the Connection Center because that might be the first step for getting your edge back. Serving God, serving here locally, that might be the first thing you do. I also want to mention that for our church, well, I lost a card here. Well, I lost it, but there's a card somewhere around here, and it's a mission trip card, and we have a trip to Honduras coming up in August. For me, that's how I got my edge when I was 19, and I'm inviting anyone who hasn't gone on a trip to consider, to just pray about it. Maybe God says no, and that's fine, but would you consider going on a trip this August? Talk to Jackie White again at the Connection Center. That's the person who's going to be running and organizing the trip, so that might be a way to make yourself uncomfortable so that you get that edge back. Those people who have gone on trips, they know the value of it. I just want you to imagine that you have your joy back, that you have that sense of purpose back, that you have that sense of satisfaction, that you have that sense of God's will. You have a sense that what you're doing is going to outlast you in light of eternity. That's what God wants you to have when you get your spiritual edge back. Would you stand with me? I'm going to close this in a word of prayer. All right, Father, thank you so much.